Saffron from Iran, Kashmir, Spain, and beyond is called the most expensive spice in the world, which sounds dramatic until you actually look at it. It does not look like luxury. It looks like a few tiny red threads trapped in a glass jar that somehow cost more than half your groceries. A few threads can turn rice golden, make dessert smell floral, and instantly make a dish feel expensive. Golden, fragrant, and weirdly suspicious. Most people think saffron costs so much because it is rare, hand-picked, and each flower only gives 3 little threads. That is true, but the real secret is stranger. With saffron, the bigger question is how you know it is real. The familiar saffron story starts with the crocus flower. It is a small purple flower that looks harmless. Then you realize the valuable part is hiding in the middle. Nature really decided to make seasoning as inconvenient as possible. Each flower gives only 3 red stigmas. Those threads have to be picked by hand, they have to be separated carefully, they have to be dried properly, then they have to be stored away from light and moisture. So yes, the price makes sense. You need a ridiculous number of flowers for a tiny amount of saffron. That is why people call it red gold. But that version leaves out the messiest part. The real story starts when people try to copy it. Saffron has traveled through some of the most famous food cultures in the world. In Persian cooking, it shows up in rice, stews, tea, ice cream, and desserts. In Spain, it gives paella that deep golden color. In Italy, it turns risotto alla Milanese into something creamy, rich, and almost glowing. In South Asia, it appears in biryani, warm milk, sweets, and celebration dishes. To most people online, saffron can look like a fancy finishing touch, something expensive sprinkled onto food to make it look special. But in a lot of kitchens, saffron has a much deeper role. It is the ingredient people bring out for holidays, weddings, family gatherings, and dishes that are supposed to feel important. And saffron does not work like a loud spice. It does not kick the door open like garlic, and it does not slap the table like chili. It moves quietly in the background, with a flavor that is floral, earthy, and slightly bitter. That is why cooks usually bloom at first. You crush the threads gently, then steep them in warm water, milk, or stock, so the color and aroma can spread through the dish. If you throw dry saffron straight into a pot and hope for the best, congratulations. You may have created the world's most expensive garnish. This is where the popular story starts to feel too clean. Saffron does not earn its value only from being picked by hand. Plenty of foods are labor-intensive. What makes saffron different is that the quality can change at almost every step after harvest. The flowers have to be gathered at the right time. The stigmas have to be separated without being damaged. Then they have to be dried carefully because drying affects the final color, taste, and smell. The color comes mostly from crocin, the bitter taste comes from picrocrocin, and the aroma comes from saffronol, which sound like 3 science words, created specifically to scare people away from cooking channels. But those compounds are the whole point. They are why saffron turns food golden, why it smells warm and hay-like, and why a few threads can change an entire pot of rice. Real saffron gets its value from that combination of color, flavor, and aroma. The problem is that most people judge saffron with their eyes first. Does the rice turn yellow? Does the dessert suddenly look expensive? Color is the easiest thing to fake. A dye can create color. Turmeric can create color. Safflower can look close enough if someone does not know what real saffron should smell like. Powdered saffron is even more suspicious because once saffron is ground up, you cannot see the threads anymore. At that point, you are buying mystery dust and trusting that everyone involved had a strong moral compass, which is cute. So the middle of the saffron story is about a spice powerful enough to change food and vulnerable enough to be copied at almost every step. Which brings us to the real question. If saffron is this easy to fake, What are people actually paying for? This is where saffron becomes much more interesting than an expensive ingredient because the real cost is human. Every real thread starts with a flower that has to be handled by hand, not scooped up by a machine or processed like cheap seasoning in a factory line. Someone has to pick it, separate it, dry it, protect it, pack it, and send it into a market where cheaper copies are waiting to take advantage of its reputation. That is the cruel little joke of saffron. The labor is massive, but the final product is tiny, delicate, exhausting, and surprisingly easy to fake. That is the gravity of the twist. Saffron became legendary because it created a trust problem. How do you prove value in something this small? A few red threads are supposed to prove labor, origin, freshness, drying quality, storage, and honesty across the entire supply chain. This is why the world's most expensive spice story feels too simple. It explains the price, but it does not explain the uncertainty. The more valuable saffron became, the more reasons people had to fake it, and fake saffron usually copies the easiest part first, the color. That is what most buyers notice. They want golden rice, glowing paella, and desserts that look expensive before anyone even tastes them. But real saffron goes beyond color. It stains slowly, smells floral and warm, and carries a slight bitterness that keeps it from tasting flat. Fake saffron can make food look yellow, but real saffron changes the dish from the inside out. So the stronger story is not that saffron is rare. The stronger story is that saffron became red gold because every real thread has to survive the field, the drying room, the cellar, the market, and every fake trying to look close enough. The luxury is knowing the jar is telling the truth. So go back to that first shot, a tiny jar of red threads that almost looks too small to matter. At first, it seems ridiculous that something so delicate can be so expensive, but by now it makes sense. Saffron carries labor, culture, chemistry, and trust in a form small enough to disappear in your hand. Today, saffron still perfumes rice, colors desserts, and shows up in family dishes, holidays, weddings, and meals that are meant to feel special. It has also become part of modern luxury marketing. Saffron lattes, saffron skincare, saffron supplements, and tiny jars online with prices that feel suspicious no matter which direction they go. Once you understand that, saffron stops feeling like a fancy garnish for expensive rice. It becomes proof that sometimes the most valuable thing in a dish is knowing the story behind what you are tasting. If you want to taste the world without leaving your kitchen, subscribe to the Golden Cookbook.